I do want to move gears and talk about the midterm elections coming up. I want to turn to Georgia, which is on everyone's minds because less than 2 months out from the midterms, and at the center of the conversation among many black men. That rarely happens, and I want to center black men today. Right now, we could be looking at a split ticket. Senator Raphael Warnock is leading in his race against Herschel Walker, but Stacy Abrams is behind Governor Kemp. Now, Abrams says if black men vote for her, she'll win. But the math ain't really math in there. And I know Roland has a lot of thoughts about that. I want to bring into the conversation Cliff Albright. He's the co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund. And Terrence Woodbury. He's a Democratic pollster and CEO and founding partner of Hitch Strategies. Cliff, I do want to start with you since you're on ground there in Georgia. We'll get to the debate between Walker and Warnock in a second. But just being on ground there, Cliff, what do you make of that? Like, are black men large in number enough to decide this race for Stacey Abrams? Or is this just a headline that's, more yellow journalism and sensationalism than truth?
Yeah, good morning, Tiffany. Great to be here with you. Obviously, black males, black men voters make up enough of a block where we can be a part of what the difference is. And we got to keep in mind, we're talking about a state where in the presidential election in 20, the difference was famously those 11,700 votes that Trump was trying to find someplace. So in a situation like that, yeah, black men as a voting bloc can be a big part of the equation. And, whether or not they come out, we come out, black men in Georgia come out and support Stacey at the same rate that black women do is a legitimate question. Now, certainly black men aren't going to bear the brunt of what happens in this election on their own, no more than black women should bear the brunt of it. Some white folks could have to wake up and actually do the right thing in the state if they wanted to move forward. But I think that it is smart to raise this issue because at the end of the day, and we hate to admit it, but there is some number of black men that will just refuse to vote. It's the sexism, it's the patriarchy that just refuse to vote for a woman, whether that woman is Stacey Abrams or whether it was Hillary Clinton in 16. And that's an issue that we have to address. Again, that's not the majority of us. It's not a plurality of us, but we have to address that. And we have to be willing to call that out and call it what it is.
Yeah. Well, Terrence, you're on ground doing work, doing polling there. And so I think Cliff raises a really good point, which I want to dig into. But Terrence, I want to ask you just for the math part, because I don't know that it's fair to lay this at the feet of black men and say, yeah, you guys cost us the election, because black men overwhelmingly vote Democratic. And so as a pollster, I'm curious your take on this conversation around black male voters in Georgia.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tiffany. The truth is that the Democratic support gap between men and women is not unique to black voters. There's a gender gap amongst all voters where men are more likely to vote conservative. Now, when you look at the math here, Stacey Abrams lost in 2018 by 55,000 votes. Had black men voted for Stacey Abrams at the same rate as black women, she would have had 120,000 more votes. So there is math there. The challenge is that since 2018, Republicans have doubled down on their efforts, coordinated and expensive investments, targeting black men, targeting men of color. And in 2020, we saw Donald Trump double his margins amongst black men in Georgia, a difference of 370,000 votes. The gap between black men and black women was the difference of 370,000 votes in Georgia. And so we do have to close that gap. And while that is not unique to black men, and we see that gap amongst all men of color, the difference with black men is that they were Democratic voters. These were Obama voters. And some would argue that they were only Obama voters. They were never, in fact, Democratic voters. And that is where Democrats have work to do to prove that since 2020, they have made progress on the issues that matter most to black men, and that they have a plan for black men moving forward.
All right. So Cliff mentioned Hillary Clinton. Terrence talked about Obama. We have to take this thing back a decade. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why am I wearing this shirt? It's my Alpha shirt. First of all, we vote, but here's why. Black men are the second most loyal voting bloc of the Democratic Party. Who's number one? Black women. So let's just be real clear who black men are voting for. In 2012, there was a 9-point gap between black men and black women, Obama-Romney. So people try to make this out to be about totally sexism. That's not true. There were 2 men running and black men. Black men were not happy with Obama. They felt he should have done more because on the issue of economics, on criminal justice, and those things along those lines. And so what then happens? You go to 16, now it's a 13-point gap. You go to 20, now it expands. But here's a race people ignore, and Terrence knows this as well. Tom Tillis, the architect of voter suppression in North Carolina, was getting around 18% as well. Why? Because Democrats were ignoring that constituency. Black women also organized and mobilized to force the Democratic Party to pay more attention to them. In many cases, black men within the party have not actually done that. So what you're seeing are black men who are saying, you're not paying attention to me. You're ignoring what's happening when it comes to economics. You're ignoring me when it comes to the critical issues. And so what the Democratic Party has not done is create a specific strategy to target those individuals because it comes down to numbers. Warnock beat Kelly Loeffler by less than 100,000 votes. And so you're the Democratic Party and you're just ignoring these numbers. What did Terrence just say? You are ignoring the potential to win. You should be trying to get every vote. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it out here because someone has to say it. The fundamental problem with the Democratic Party is that white strategists are controlling the money, are controlling the strategy.
Yeah.
Yes, African Americans are having input, but if you're trying to win, you better listen to black people. You better fund these initiatives. Otherwise, you're going to lose. And that gap is going to widen.
And fund candidates. Fund candidates. Instead of meddling around in Republican elections trying to put one over the other because you think they're easier to beat. Fund candidates.
But also off-year strategies.
Right.
You can't come talk to black men in the middle of September. The election is November. And I called it. They should have been doing this in January after Biden got inaugurated to build up a program so when elections come, now you properly prep.
And invest in black media, brother. We know that.
Black-owned media, not black-targeted.
Black-owned media.
Absolutely.
Cliff, listen, I think Roland made a really legitimate point here. I will say, you know, a lot of black men sometimes feel like they're ignored or they're put down, particularly sometimes even by black women in the media. So this is not that. But I do hear Roland's point that felt ignored. But you feel ignored, and then you go over to the other side. The oppressed feel oppressed. So then you go and try to align with the oppressor. So I'm not putting black men down, but sometimes it's like, well, some of you Kevin Samuels following tariqnasheed quoting people, please look at the truth and see what's happening and get in line with some of the black women. Is majority, like he said, vote Democrat, but that margin of people who can be plucked away from your people and go advance policies that harm your people, I just don't understand that.
Tiffany. You get on these white-owned platforms and feel the need to use sign language when you're talking to black men. What is sign language, y'all? Shame, insult, guilt, and the need to be right. I'm sorry, Tiffany Cross, if black men are letting you and other black women down because we're not getting in line behind black women to vote for Stacy Abrams. I'm sorry. I'm sorry on behalf of all black men, Tiffany. If we're not appeasing black women's needs and wants when it comes to the Democratic Party, I know, this is the party that black women saved. Black women saved us. They saved America. That's what they told us. And now black men are not in line, y'all. We are the problem. Not the Democratic Party. Not the party that black people overwhelmingly vote for decades, for generations. And we have still seen no significant progress in this country. Just look around. What has the Democratic Party gotten black people? If you look in any major city in America, black people are usually at the damn bottom, even when there are black people in positions of power on a political scale. Cities full of black mayors that are usually Democrats, black city council, And I hate to tell you, but in a lot of these cities all across America, West Coast, East Coast, down South, Midwest, black people tend to be at the bottom in comparison to their white counterparts. What has voting for the Democratic Party got black America, Tiffany? But black men are the issue. We're the issue. You get on MSNBC and claim that the oppressed is joining the oppressors. The oppressed is joining the oppressors. That's what she said. I didn't say that. Ma'am, Tiffany, let's have some real conversation right now, sister. I know you might not ever run across this channel, but you got to get some work today. You got to get some work today. Tiffany Cross. Miss Cross. May I call you that? You're on a corporate-owned and sponsored media outlet, MSNBC. The MS stands for Microsoft, and it's a merger with NBC. And this is controlled by Comcast, which is a subsidiary of General Electric, which happens to be the 14th largest defense contractor in America. Defense contractor. Y'all know what that means, right? Right? Do we know what that means? Corporate owned and sponsored MSNBC. You're no different than CNN. You're no different than Fox. You all have an agenda. You all have an agenda, and you use your platform to sell products and lies to people so we can engulf and watch this shit every day. Every day. Who's being oppressed? Who is joining the oppressors, ma'am? You mean to tell me MSNBC is good white folk? You mean to tell me that the Democratic Party is good white folk? That the Democratic Party has no ties to white supremacy? Including the man that you were telling us to vote for? The man that said if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. The poppycock, the hypocrisy of it all. Black men are not to be insulted, shamed, and guilted live on national TV. And you probably messed it up for your sister, Stacy Abrams. You messed it up. I'm pretty sure Stacy Abrams right now, her team is calling Tiffany Cross and saying, what did you do? Why? We need black men vote. Y'all go read up on Stacy Abrams in the black male vote. They are desperately trying to get our votes in Georgia right now. Desperately trying to get black men. And here you have Tiffany Cross come on national TV and just, again, shame, guilt, and insult black men on live television where other ethnic groups can watch this shit and come up with their own sweeping judgments of black men, which that's what we already face here in America. We already face persecution, judgments, generalizations, and villainized every day on TV. And here you are trying to pretend as if, well, I'm not doing that. This is not me. Woe is me. But at the same time, black men, you are joining the oppressors. Black men, you need to get in behind us and get in line. Black men, you need to stop listening to Kevin Samuels and Tariq.Nasheed, which, by the way, y'all know how I feel about Tariq.Nasheed. But Kevin Samuels, really? The man is no longer here to defend himself. And you just, really? Like, what did that have to do with anything? That's the need to be right, the need to insult, the need to shame, to guilt. And let me tell you, Tiffany Cross, because clearly you single. You ain't got a man. You 40-something years old, ain't got a man. And it's clearly obvious you've been out of touch, because no woman is going to get on national TV and talk to black men the way you did and expect black men to be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to the polls and vote for Stacy Abrams. Black men will not vote for Stacy Abrams because of this interview. I guarantee you they won't do it because of this. And let me just say this. It's not necessarily because black men are petty. It's because black men have realized that, hey, it's been, I don't know, since the 60s that we've been voting overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party. And I'm looking around and I'm not seeing the benefits. I'm not seeing the benefits. You mean to tell me that Trump out of office is the only benefit that we can gain from voting for the Democratic Party? No, that shit ain't working. And maybe because, I don't know, because I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe because men are more conditioned to be leaders more so than women. And I'm not saying men are greater than women or vice versa, but maybe because we have been conditioned to be leaders more so than followers, even though there's a lot of followers amongst our community of men. But we can say, you know what? Maybe I should just take a step back and say, hey, maybe you should work for my vote. Give me something. What have you done for me lately? Instead of just, I don't know, repeating the same mistakes over and over again, expecting different results. I get it, women. You get trickle down benefits when you vote for the Democratic Party. But in the best interest of us all, we get Nathan. We get nada. And MSNBC has been doing this for quite some time, where they have just shitted on black men for the whole world to see. And they use black women like Joy Reid and Tiffany Cross to trump up the guilt and the shame and the insults against us. Black men saw how y'all treated Ice Cube. Ice Cube got just ridiculed live on TV. He got crucified because all because what? All because he demanded that Democrats and Republicans do something for black people, and you have to actually work to get our votes. Just don't give up your vote. Oh, Ice Cube, you sabotaging us. You a Trump shill. All of a sudden, Ice Cube was a Trump shill. He was working for the Republicans. He was stupid. He needed to stay in his place. He needed to shut up and dribble. All because he said, look, we need something, and we shouldn't just give our vote away. I don't know what to tell y'all, but when Trump was in office, America didn't seem any different than when Obama was in office. And guess what? A brother still survived. Matter of fact, a brother was eating pretty good during Trump's presidency. I'm not saying that's because of Trump, but I'm saying that's in spite of Trump. I mean, this is utterly ridiculous. It's not because black men are misogynists that we're not voting for Stacy Abrams. I tell you this. If black men had the option of choosing between Stacy Abrams and Cynthia McKinney, or Cynthia McKinney and Governor Kemp, we would overwhelmingly vote for Cynthia McKinney. And guess what? When Cynthia McKinney was running for office, during the same time of Barack Obama's running for office, where was the black women that supported her? Where was the sisterhood in supporting Cynthia McKinney? Y'all gave that sister no respect. Y'all gave her no airplay. And a lot of men didn't either. And you know what? Since I just brought up Cynthia McKinney, let me remind you on who she is. Because this sister gets it. And unfortunately, a sister who gets the political system and the political structure in this country and realizes the effects that it has on black America, she never gets any media attention from the Joy Reids and the Tiffany Crosses. She gets no respect. But yeah, Stacy Abrams, who has made it abundantly clear that she ain't doing shit for black people, just shut up and vote. Which, by the way, before I read this interview back in 2008, I think it was around 2008, it was some years ago, from Cynthia McKinney, that is very telling in itself. Before I do that, I just want to say this. Just a word of advice. Tiffany Cross, Joy Reid, y'all are not talking to black men. Y'all are talking at black men. We don't want that shit. You're not going to talk at us. You're going to talk to us. And if you don't talk to us, then Stacy Abrams, she ain't winning shit. Which, by the way, she not winning that shit anyway, because, again, you're not addressing our needs. So let me get to this interview real quick. Let me read these excerpts from this interview, because it's very telling. And this is why, again, black America is doomed. Black America doesn't know how to vote in a politically mature manner. And this is the reason why some black men are finally waking up and realizing that, oh yeah, the Democratic Party haven't done shit for us. And they're not going to do shit until we change. So let me read this from Cynthia McKinney. So this is an interview from For Harriet, who interviewed Cynthia McKinney some years ago during President Obama's presidency. So for Harriet says, I wanted to go back to 2008 for a little bit. You were the Green Party candidate for president and your nomination wasn't really talked about, specifically in black media. It seems like you were almost neglected in favor of now President Obama. Did you get that feeling back then? And if so, what did you think about it? McKinney says, you don't have to do a content analysis to understand that there's very little that's being written about your candidacy. Of course, that's not just from the black media. That was from any media. I think it stemmed in large part from a recognition of where the black electorate was at that time and currently is. Unfortunately, there are certain limitations with the way black people vote. Those limitations eventually end up resulting in a policy that is detrimental to the black community. This is Cynthia McKinney saying this. All I can do is offer the opportunity for a behavior change. What really has to be done in order to encourage and foster the behavior change is for people to understand eternally and almost viscerally that the current situation is a result of doing things of business as usual. Therefore, I did what I could do, and it is up to the rest of the community to do what it can do in order to improve our collective situation. Now, again, let me continue. For Harriet says, your nomination was historic. You, Rosa Clemente, on the ballot as well. Do you think the fact that you were two black women impacted the way your candidacy was covered or embraced even by the political left? McKinney says, I think it had less to do with us. Many of the people that I knew very well and worked with, and that Rosa knew very well and had worked with, basically turned their backs on our candidacy. Even though they understood exactly who we were and what we stood for, instead they embraced a candidate about which they knew very little, and in many cases, nothing at all. And were going with a party that just a few weeks earlier they were willing to walk away from. And I'm gonna read this last part, bear with me. It's not a secret that there were a lot of angst in the black community in 2006, 2007, around the failure, quite frankly, of the Democratic Party to do anything to change the material conditions inside the black community. This is a party that has consistently received 90% and more of the black vote. Even if we look on a local level, we can look at the statistics that have come from Loyola University and around the situation of the racial disparities in the city of Chicago. Chicago has always been the place of Democratic Party machines. If the Democratic Party was going to function for anybody, it should function for the black community in the city of Chicago, which, by the way, black people in the city of Chicago, I'm not saying all, but it's a large percentage of black people in Chicago that are doing bad. I mean, it's bad. It is two different worlds between the black Chicagoans and the white Chicagoans. And that's telling in itself. Let me continue. Then to go over the city of New York, you look at New York City, and at that time, New York Times had done a study. It looked at young black men or black males, period, between the ages of 25 and 60, I believe. What it found was nearly half of all the black men were unemployed. You can't have a headline like that in the New York Times without some political consequence. You would think at some point that if nobody else, black people would say, we demand that there be a public policy change to rectify this situation. Yet the voting behavior largely remained the same. See, Cynthia McKinney, a black woman, said this years ago. More black men are starting to see this. They're starting to think like this, and they're being more vocal about changes that need to be done by the party that we overwhelmingly vote for. And because of that, we're being villainized. Yeah, I know Tiffany Cross said, no, I'm not, this is not one of those black media outlets that are coming at you. I hear your cries. Then instantly, she just has to use sign language against black men, which, by the way, you insulted Kevin Samuels, and I'm using Kevin Samuels' sign language because this is a perfect example of that. Tiffany Cross, a word of advice. If you want black men to vote for Stacy Abrams, then have Stacy Abrams and her people talk to black men. Listen to what we want. Now, we know you ain't gonna do shit. You're not gonna do shit because the Democratic Party hasn't done shit in the greater schemes of things for the black community in general. However, at least pretend. I'm telling you a word of advice. At least pretend to act like you give a damn about black men's wants and needs. You told black men on live television to get behind black women and get in line with your agenda, with black women's agenda. Isn't it about the black population in general? If black women saved America because black women overwhelmingly voted for Democratic Party, then black women has failed the black community. Now I'm not saying black women has failed black America, but if that's what you're going by, if you're going by black women saving America because they made sure that the Democratic Party won seats in Congress, then black women have failed black America. And black men are trying to correct it by demanding that, look, Democrats, y'all need to get y'all shit together. We can't just give our vote away. It's the bullet of the ballot. That's what Malcolm X said. Decades ago. But hey, black men are just simply brutes who are just listening to tariqnasheed for political advice. And yeah, there's some people out there that listen to that Negro for political advice. But that had nothing to do with nothing. Kevin Samuels doesn't even talk about politics. Yet you threw a dead man under the bus. Get y'all shit together. Tiffany Cross, sister, this ain't it. You messed it up for your home girl. Yes, you messed it up. Yes. So that's all I got. Let me know what y'all think. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, holla.